Human Rights Watch, an international non-governmental organization, has released a new report stating that the Taliban has intensified and expanded its suppression of human rights, particularly women's rights in Afghanistan. According to the World Report 2024, the Taliban increasingly enforced repressive policies in 2023, including the suppression of women's protests, arbitrary detention of women activists, the disappearance of some women after detention, and their torture and that of their family members. Have a look. The human rights situation in Afghanistan continued to deteriorate in 2023 as the Taliban committed widespread human rights violations, particularly against women and girls. Afghanistan remained the only country where women and girls could not access secondary and higher education. Human Rights Watch, an international non-governmental organization headquartered in New York, has released a new report stating that the Taliban has intensified and expanded its suppression of human rights, particularly women's rights, in Afghanistan. According to the World Report 2024, the Taliban increasingly enforced repressive policies in 2023, including the suppression of women's protests, arbitrary detention of women activists, the disappearance of some women after detention, and their torture and that of their family members. It added that the ban on women's work has deprived many Afghan women of their livelihoods and linked a part of Afghanistan's economic crisis to the restrictions on women's employment. Recently, at a US Congress session, Reena Amiri, US Special Envoy for Human Rights in Afghanistan, said that the situation in Afghanistan has severely deteriorated in the last 2 years.
The human rights situation in Afghanistan has severely deteriorated. Members of ethnic and religious minority communities, particularly Hazaras, are exposed to escalating threats and violence. Media freedom has been drastically curtailed, and vulnerable groups live in a state of peril. Restrictions against women and girls have been the most extreme. The Taliban have systemically targeted Afghan women and girls with more than 50 discriminatory edicts at the national level and many more at the subnational level. They have attempted to erase Afghan women and girls from society, revoking girls' access to education beyond the primary level, limiting women's employment, and depriving them of the opportunity to put food on the table.
For a large portion of its history, Afghanistan has experienced violence and injustice due to decades of armed conflict. However, since seizing power 2 years ago, Talibani rulers have severely restricted human rights in the war-torn country. Institutions designed to support human rights have been severely limited or shut down completely. The Taliban government is conducting extrajudicial executions, arbitrary arrests, torture, and unlawful detention of perceived opponents with impunity, creating an atmosphere of fear. Moreover, the de facto rulers of the country have ordered the judges to impose Sharia law. Public executions and floggings are being reported in the country. In addition, the nation has entered a severe economic and humanitarian crisis, with 2/3 of the populace currently in need of aid.
They've restricted freedom of movement for women and effectively removed them from public spaces. Those who have raised their voices have faced harassment, detention, and violence at the hands of the Taliban. Given the Taliban's track record and extreme ideology, the road ahead continues to look extremely challenging. Yet, even as we acknowledge these difficulties, we must remain resolute and support Afghan women and girls. If we do not continue to stand up for the rights of Afghan women, we put at peril women's rights everywhere.
Taliban has created an increasingly intimidating atmosphere, forcing many media outlets to close. The space for free media has drastically shrunk. Many journalists have begun to self-censor as a result of the increasing restrictions they faced, which included arbitrary arrests, illegal detentions, and torture in response to reporting that criticized the Taliban. While in custody, journalists are facing severe kinds of torture. Numerous journalists have left the nation. Afghanistan's economic instability and isolation from the outside world have made the situation worse.